despair in me about the state of the internet. Oh, man. Like, memes, right, used to be fun. They used to be wonderful things that brought joy and wonder to the world, right? But the more I kind of live in this here internet, the more I am convinced that memes are just macro and micro propaganda. Or at least have a very big potential to turn into that. But no, I was catching on some politics yesterday, and the whole thing with Ron DeSantis. You know the whole Sigma meme? He used one of those in his advertisements, and it just kind of made so much sense that that's what will end up happening, you know, since memes are so popular. What the politicians going to do? Try and align themselves with that. And since memes are so malleable and simplistic and can be bent into whatever thing you want them to be, and because it's so simple, the simple-minded then feel a kinship with the person who likes or using the same meme, and everybody dies in 5-second intervals as the meme just rotates around and around and around. You know what I mean? But again, you got the macro propaganda, which is going to be utilized by politicians, corporations, you know. But then you've got the micro propaganda, which I'm, you know, a bit hypocrisy talking about this, considering every content creator does it on some level, right? My peers in college seem to get all of the political knowledge from memes. So I guess they know what they're doing. That's the problem. Memes don't have any allegiance, you know? They are basically blank slates able to be used to manipulate people on a mass scale. Because with memes, you don't need to think. You are told what to think through the meme, you know? Even though it inherently has no meaning, it's given meaning, and simplistic meaning. And people don't want the complex talk, right? It's the one thing I've learned through streaming. People don't like, even though I do rant a lot on some intellectual issues, hey, I don't always do what's best for myself, shall we say. But people like the simple, right? They like it boiled down into, you know, 5-10 seconds. And if you can't do that, fuck you, you know? But it's a way of, essentially, for whatever kind of idea you're putting on that meme, a way of kind of boiling it down and removing all argument, all debate, anything that assists people to getting to the truth and reality of a situation. Memes can remove that, and like posters and propaganda in the past just convey a very simple message that is very kind of easy to engage the primordial part of our brains and manipulate to rile up into a bit of a frenzy or whatever the like poster meme slash anything wants. And it was always going to happen. Anything that's popular ends up being abused, you know, in that fashion by the politics, corporations, or just people. And you see it on a macro and micro level everywhere. It's ridiculous. Kind of like the political cartoons of the old days? Yeah, exactly like that, actually. Exactly like that. Although political cartoons were better at conveying a message. Memes are more stripped down, and a message can be inserted into a meme where a political cartoon just inherently has a meaning or a satire behind it through its entire construct through the cartoon. Depends what kind of cartoon you're talking about. The satirists have more of a leg to stand on outside of propaganda because it's designed to make you think, like a satirical political cartoon. But they can be used for bad as well, just you know, mockery and kind of not putting a fundamental argument down as much as just taking the piss, you know. And people love people being, you know, say you have a mild dislike of someone, anyone like ripping the shit out of them, taking the piss out of them. Hey, I mean, you know, it's funny, isn't it? You know. Modern day memes are so bad anyway. They really are. They're so bad. Well, I can't even extend how bad they are, man. It's not even the quality of the memes, it's the abuse of them. Whether consciously or subconsciously. Because, say you are a influencer or anyone who creates a meme and then pokes it into people's brain enough that what happens is that army you've created of simple-minded who go around spouting the same thing over and over again for 1,000 times in a row, that is basically, not propaganda as much as it is advertisement. If that meme is connected to you, you've basically created a personal army of people who they might know why, they might not know. It might be because it has an inherent kind of funny undertone, but still, you've got the underlying kind of problem that it still is advertisement. If it has a connection, if it has an original source. Know what I mean? Or have I lost you there? So people just think they're having fun when they're basically... It's like wearing a Nike t-shirt, You are paying to be an advertisement. It's why I never wear branded clothing, apart from the Renegade shirt that I sell. Again, hypocrisy is not lost on me, put it that way. I said I would argue against it, but I'll let the hypocrisy stand, It is what it is. What is the last good meme you saw that isn't connected to an internet personality? Happy face! That's the last good meme. Happy face, man. I just stay away from anything political because politics is depressing. True, but politics relies on people like you to get away with absolute murder and oppress people. So while I respect your right to not get involved for potentially your own personal health, because it's so mentally debilitating to be into it, I get it. But unfortunately, they rely on that apathy. So they can get away with doing whatever they want, because if you don't know about it, you can't fight it. It was a more innocent time. It really was, man, and I miss it. And I despise what the internet's become. In a micro and a macro level. Hey, I still have fun, but it's the little things, It's always the little things that just... Why can't people just think what they're doing? Like, for themselves. Like, people have a meme identity these days. You know what I mean? Like, they literally build their identity. Like, identity in a way in politics at the moment, and outside of politics, is so ingrained in people's souls. They build their identity, not in themselves, but they use outside sources to grab an identity and get it in themselves. Their identity is not born from themselves. It's born from something else. Whether it's memes, another type of random, I wouldn't say random, but another just arbitrary kind of identity that they connect themselves with. And that's potentially because, in a big, like, if you have an identity that's connected with more people around you, like, that kind of solidarity of identity is comforting. But you're not a f***ing individual. Yeah, you can be an individual in a group, but the way I see it, how they act, most group identities in the way they act, they're not individuals. They are just spouting the rhetoric and ideology of that group. It's become too easy for people to connect on the internet. I had a thought in my head that doesn't really have an answer because it's a stupid thought. But what country is the internet? You mean the XQC chat? Partly. To be fair, again, I'm speaking more in general than any particular thing. I only study politics when it's about time to vote. Voting is important. True that, man. I think it's easy to do that when there's so much content out there. Let's keep looking for the next thing to relate to. That's the problem. Like, again, people are using the content for, and potentially to build an, like, to, I relate to Apple Can't Run. Yeah. How you doing, Stoic? Hey, Incognitus. Bonin. Actual. What's cracking, dudes? Happy Tuesday. You see, I don't see... Like, sometimes learning things is uncomfortable, right? It can be painful. It's suffering, you know? Trying to seek the truth, whatever truth is, for yourself. Building an identity. Building a reason to live. To continue, you know? Whether it's that journey itself or... Well, because the end's never going to justify, you know? Historically. But people seem to be more using group and everything we talked about as a comfort, you know? And a way to not think. A way to not have to think. A way to be told. Because that's easier, you know? Is it loneliness? Also that. Also, the inherent problem of the internet, which is, you know, massive connectivity around the world. Again, here's the thing. In theory, the internet could have gone two ways. I said, what country is the internet? And the answer is it's not, you know? It's obvious. And if you exclude the idea of corporations, which you kind of can't, but we're going to do for this one. The fact that you can meet people around the... And this is why Lawrence of Arabia have been watching it, because it actually brings up a great kind of ideology of crossing boundaries, right? Normally, countries can get along, but a lot of the time, historically, war occurs between massive groups of people, right? However, on an individual level, people often find common ground, and usually between two different societies, one person going into another person's society, and it's completely alien, showing respect, showing an understanding, and accepting and showing respect to their way of life has often been the most kind of beautiful way and responsible and... what's the word? Necessary way of connecting two peoples. And while that can happen on the internet, and does in part, you've also got the fact that group identity, which we've all seen, get larger and larger and larger. In a specific form. Because it's always existed, right? The internet was a way to break free of it, but it never happened, really. So, the internet is just continuing what has always happened. Instead of states on the internet, you have group ideology that go to war. But on an individual level, you can find that common ground, that respect, that understanding. You can be two different people with two different ideas, and you can respect each other, sometimes. Sometimes, but the more a person is ingrained in group ideology, the more they act like a state, a classical country that goes to war with another state. Showing respect for someone else's culture will probably just get you someone to yell cultural appropriation at you today. Yeah, idiots. The whole cultural appropriation thing doesn't exist. I'm not going to get into that conversation, but... yeah, exactly, Crimson. People don't even know the meaning of it. People assume it exists because they've been told it exists. And people don't... As a historian, right, people do not have understanding enough of history to talk about cultural appropriation, even if it did exist. You know what I mean? Like, they get told a part of history, and then they're like, you're culturally appropriating, ignoring 95% of all other history, you know? So, I kind of ignore it as a valid argument, because it's not. Most of the time. I mean, there's room for intellectual debate about it, but, I haven't seen any. So, you know, I'll wait. Hey, but, you know, pretty strong conversation to start the day off. Ron DeSantis, man. That prick. Yeah, he's such a fucking tool. Like, politicians using memes, man. Here's the problem, though. Ron DeSantis is incompetent, using the Sigma male kind of grinds meme to hate on trans people, thinking he's all based as shit, right? And that will connect with some people, but most people are just going to laugh at him because he comes off as out of touch, incompetent. If he wasn't, though, if he was a populist like Donald Trump, who did successfully incorporate memes, that's dangerous. It's another way of forcing kind of like the simplistic narrative, the uneducated narrative, a narrative that rides populism on a wave that basically riles up a bunch of people into a frenzy which often ends in absolute tragedy historically. I mean, I'm not completely against populism. Barack Obama was a populist in a way. And when you heard him speak, when he was on his campaign trails, holy fuck, some of the most inspiring shit you'll ever hear. However, when he got into power, I wouldn't say it was terrible, but he never lived up to the actual promise, right? And that's always going to be the way of populism, especially in a democracy where the presidency has limited power. In dictatorships, though. Holy fuck. You ride that wave to genocide normally. But yeah, Obama was literally insane. Growing up listening to that. Hey, but when Obama never did, in my opinion, apart from, the whole drone thing, he got handed a war, what are you going to do? Well, I suppose end it, but then, we saw what happened in Afghanistan when, it pulled out. There was no right answer there, It was always going to end in fucking, chaos. Can you picture a world in 20 years, 20 additional years of children growing up to TikTok and some short attention span switching content every 30 seconds content? Hey, Bonin, I'll be here, hopefully. I've always said I'm here forever, bro, unless I die, which ain't happening. I'll be here fighting the good fight, man. And many of us will, I was very lucky to be... I grew up outside on the streets, and the internet was creeping in, so I got a kind of 50-50 education. And memes hadn't really came into short content at all wasn't what it is now, Any content we did have, it was more TV and watching TV, long-form content and enjoying it. And any internet we had was just information rather than content, That's how I describe it. So having that 50-50 education, I feel like I'm in a perfect position to, speak on certain things. Like when Disney tried to trademark that phrase, Day of the Dead. Did they? How the f*** did they do that? Incognito. So an important part of culture is being able to share each other's culture. I don't get why it's frowned upon nowadays and simply enjoy each other's culture. True that, man. True that. Hey, as long as you have respect for it in a way, Here's the thing, right? You do not have to have respect for someone else's culture. You just don't have to, right? You're an individual who has free will and free reign to make decisions. You don't have to do anything. And some cultures, especially if they involve the massive kind of suffering of their peoples, should be, as we've seen historically, destroyed. Like Hitler's Germany. I think nearly everyone would agree on that, apart from the rise of a certain part of the internet. Well, I say the rise, the continuation of a certain part of the internet. But historically, you don't have to, and you're not obligated to either. However, I think you need to have a realization that you don't live their life. You don't know what culture they grew up in. You don't know their situation. You don't know their history. You never grew up and immersed yourself in their history. I think, again, looking at suffering, death, and chaos, I think we can all have a nice little that, and be against it. And maybe even a disrespect if it's ingrained in their culture. But for the most part. Like I said, we just don't know. And that leads to the kind of reasoning that because we are ignorant, that we should either not automatically respect it, but at least be open to, offering that respect freely, or educate ourselves more, so we can talk about it, actually educated instead of being ignorant fuck that we find on the internet all these days. Trolling through Twitter. I'm knackered on the internet, man. I love making content, I love having a platform to speak on these things, And I love gaming. But, holy fuck. Stepping foot outside of, this little box. Oh my god, man. It's insane. Again, as it's been suggested, what happens in 20 years? Holy fuck, dude. It's in... I had the thought before, what happens if it ends up that there will be no states anymore? Just states on the internet, you know what I mean? Because group identity is getting so ingrained in culture, what happens if those groups of people kind of make their own states on the internet? You kind of see it already with the split between Rumble, more right-leaning, and YouTube getting rid of all the right? So states are forming online. You have Twitter, which is, taken over by Elon, which kind of... Elon invaded and made it his own personal state. So, you know what I mean? There's a potential for statehood on the internet to occur for groups of people. You know him. And that's only going to get worse, by the way. Unless there's regulation put in place or someone actually thinks about things. Because if you exclude groups, that's generally what's going to happen. They're going to find their own place. They're going to often flourish because people generally don't live in a singular vacuum. There's going to be people that support them, and that will encourage and grow. And once they've got at least a certain size of platform, then they can advertise, then they can reach out and grab people and influence them. You remember what happened with Trump already? True, yeah. I mean, it's happened in so many little respects, Bone. Often history changes like that, right? The age of massive dramatical shift in history, as we've seen, a lot, is kind of over. What we see now is more of a gradual, really gradual shift into something different that you barely notice is happening unless you kind of open your eyes, which people don't want to do. People just don't want to do. They want to look at the memes and want to go, ha! What are you going to do? Move to their country and live there? Quit appropriating their cultures. To quote the previous president of the United States of America, I have the best words. To be fair, that is a great fucking phrase. I love it, Trump did have a way of word. I despise the right? But you've got to... you can respect certain things about a person even if you absolutely abhor them, That's the problem, though. He is a bit of a meme lord, Him having that meme lord status means he has power in this modern age. And Biden, not being a meme lord, has kind of anti-memes sent against him. I still think Biden would win against Trump, though. I just don't think the shift has happened enough to really... Boomers are basically, keeping the status quo alive, or older, Or even maybe, I don't know. It's intricate. Trump is an incredibly talented con man. Gibberish, Joe Biden. The gibberish, he forms his own memes, but they're not good for him. He doesn't choreograph them, He doesn't know he's doing it, while Trump absolutely knows what he's doing. And that's terrifying for the future, For populism in general, because, again, when populism occurs, you basically have an army. In normal politics, if you think back to when two non-populists run against each other, they'll have people that vote for them, but that's not an army that's voting for you. That's just people who like your policies and want you to sort out your country a little bit. But say two populists run together, you literally have two armies of fanatics. And that's scary. Especially when it's entwined with memes that have no inherent meaning, that the orator, the populist person at the very top, can literally manufacture and propagandize their personal army into all sorts of emotions for 5 seconds at a time. You know? 5-second meme. Oh, I've got them riled up now. That's the future. Trump era had great memes. Can't deny it. Depends what you mean by great memes, though. Again, just because it's great memes doesn't mean it's not problematic for the future. But I'd agree with what you say. Revengeance had some great... Metal Gear Solid in general, soft-boiled. Right. Let me find the... Because this is really good. If you want to learn about Metal Gear Solid and memes, because the entirety of Metal Gear Solid as a series is about memes in general. Especially Metal Gear Solid 2. No, I think it was actually just Metal Gear Solid 2 that was mostly meme-related. Like, I'm not talking about memes as we know them. More Richard Dawkins. The history of memes. This guy is legendary. You'll have to scroll down a bit. He's made some shit since. But look at his somewhat older Metal Gear Solid videos, and they're seriously well done. Like, I can't, like, you know. He's done the thinking thought for you, so. It's only the end. There's second run of best PCS2 game, also within Metal Gear Solid universe. Is it? You just want to see the world burn? Well, people don't mind thinking that they want to see the world burn, Bonin, because they're on the internet. And they think it doesn't matter what happens around me. I'm in my box, I'm in my room, I'm in my computer, you know? World can burn. I'm on the internet surfing the waves, doing the memes, you know? It's so fucking stupid. No offense to anyone. Yeah, you know, it's just truth, isn't it? In my opinion. Or the way I see it. Not necessarily. It's my truth. But no, thinking on a macro scale, that Trump, meme lord himself, right, can literally create an army and a frenzy to make his people do what he wants. Like, with a 5-second meme, he can instill an emotion that basically has an element of control. That's on a macro scale. What we haven't really talked about as much is the micro scale of manipulation on memes. Which I'm not really going to get into that much, but I want you to think about it on your own time, right? Whether it's in the content creation space and Twitch, YouTube, any other social platform, how the micro element on an individual scale, how people can use memes to manipulate an audience, right? Think on it your own time. But it's definitely just as valid as the macro. I've already talked before about the relation on, like, you know, content creation platforms about how I see it. So I don't want to go into it again. And I haven't talked so much about the macro, so that was today's lecture. Politics are a distraction. It's all about the money behind the scenes, corporations and global powers. It just so happens that that distraction controls the entire world. You know? Incidentally. I have an off-topic question. Oh, go for it, man. I'm done anyway. That was the end. I've had my 40-minute rant. I might put that on YouTube, actually. That was good. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your... Yeah, getting involved. It's not so behind the scenes at this point. Yeah, it's in plain view. And that's... The more in... Right. If you're a person who pays attention and you notice something more and more that is generally seen as bad, like corruption, the more it becomes obvious, it means the more people are being distracted by something else. Usually.